If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. In the city of Kugane, a member of the East Aldenar Trading Company comes running up to you screaming about how he needs help from a capable adventurer. And of course you fit that description. There's some trouble in Kugane Castle that the government is trying to keep secret, so naturally this Lalafell tells you all about it. The place has been taken over by bandits, and they've taken hostages, some very high-profile hostages. They want the country's borders to be closed off because they feel that Kugane made a mistake by working with other nations, and they don't want foreigners to set foot on their lands anymore. Normally the Second Segumi would have dealt with the problem, but they don't want to put the hostages at risk, and for them to make their move they would need government approval, which there's no telling how long that would take to get. So they called on the East Aldenar Trading Company to see if there was some other way to get the hostages out of the castle. The only reason they did that was because one of the hostages is from Uda, so they really don't want anything to happen to her because they would end up getting attacked by an army of Lalafell, and nobody wants that. So the Second Segumi wants the trading company to put together a small team to infiltrate the castle, and this Lalafell wants you to be a part of that team. We all know that the Warrior of Light is going to do it, so he heads off to the aqueducts to where a guard is waiting by a secret passage into the castle to tell you what to do next. The group of criminals who took over the castle are led by a merchant named Kageyama, and they think the real reason he wants to close the borders is to avoid having to compete with foreign businesses. His group's not really a threat that the Second Segumi think they couldn't handle. The problem is he's hired a bodyguard who is a well-known swordsman from the Hingan underworld. He's extremely expensive, and the more money he's paid, the harder he fights, and Kageyama has a lot of money. Your mission is to charge in and cause a distraction and deal with the merchant and his bodyguard while the Second Segumi sneak in and free the hostages. The Warrior of Light and his team break into the castle and prove pretty quickly that what the Second Segumi member said was accurate. The merchant's bandits are hardly a threat worth mentioning. Your team cuts your way through them without breaking a sweat, leaving only one opponent left, Yojimbo. He more than lives up to his reputation as both a master swordsman and a greedy capitalist, demanding money before he'll unleash his special techniques. A wise and very crazy clown once said, "If you're good at something, never do it for free," and Yojimbo takes that to heart. Whether or not the samurai could have actually beaten you all or not is something that we'll have to find out in the future because Kageyama runs out of money, so Yojimbo just leaves, leaving Kageyama at your mercy. The man who hired you has already heard about what happened by the time you make it back. Kageyama was arrested, however they couldn't find Yojimbo, but the hostages were saved and Lady Leliju shows up to thank you both personally. Considering the fact that she was Lolorito's niece, it's a very good thing you managed to save her before anything bad could happen to her, because I'd be willing to bet that Lolorito is likely the most dangerous and powerful Lalafell in the world. And the destruction he would have rained down on Kugane if his niece had been hurt would have been legendary. Of course, it still might happen because the girl decided to travel the world and write stories about what she does, so she'll definitely end up in harm's way again, and whoever hurts her will have to face the wrath of Lolorito. Dravani is one of those places that the Warrior of Light visits pretty often, and on one of his trips, he runs into a treasure hunter who just finished running for her life. She was exploring a place with some friends when they got chased by some seedkin and nearly died. Even though the place she was in was pretty unsafe, she still wants the treasure, and since you look kind of tough, she asks you to clear a path for her crew. They'll pay you, which is pretty much all you need to hear to take any job, so the Warrior of Light heads to meet the woman's friend named Sawney outside of St. Marcien's Arboretum, while she goes back to Idleshire to get a few more people to join in the exploration once the Warrior of Light does his thing. Sawney's not all that hard to spot since he has a giant blonde afro, and when he finds out you're there to deal with the living plants that are running around in the Arboretum, he's happy because his people had no shot of clearing the place out. In the time before the Sharlayans abandoned the area, they used the place to study plant life from all around the world. They also used to keep the stuff well contained. With no one there to monitor the stuff, the plants have pretty much taken over everything, and quite a few of them are man-eaters. Under most circumstances, Sawney's people would have just left the place alone. But they found some paperwork that showed that there's something in the Arboretum that they could really use to help the people of Idleshire. He doesn't care about most of the other relics lying around in the place, so they're yours if you want them. That's not a bad deal, so the Warrior of Light heads into the Arboretum to do a little bit of not so harmless lawn mowing. Saying the place is overgrown is not even just an understatement, it's an outright lie. The original structure is pretty much gone, replaced by ponds with lily pads the size of elephants and a beehive the size of a hotel. It's cartoonishly big, and the only type of plant life that's in the place wants to eat you. But the Warrior of Light's not really new to any of this, so he cuts his way through it all, clearing a path for the treasure hunters. Since you cleared the way, Sawny's people find what they're looking for, and he's eager to get back to tell the worst named Roganin in the game, Midnight Dew, what he found. Sawny figures that she'd want to thank you for your help, so you go with him to talk to the woman. The woman's happy that it worked out, because what they were trying to get were special seeds made by the Sharlayans that will help the people of Idleshire get new things to trade. Right now, the small settlement makes its money by collecting junk from the ruins around the area, then selling it for a little bit of profit. But eventually they'll run out of stuff, so if the community wants to keep growing and prospering, then they need new ways to get resources. Those seeds were phase 1 of that plan, and crops that can grow in any climate are definitely a valuable resource. It won't happen overnight, but since you helped out, Midnight Dew plans on keeping you posted on how it turns out. But since the Warrior of Light constantly goes to Idleshire anyway, he'll likely see the changes happen firsthand. Ironically enough, the next time he sees Sawny isn't in Idleshire at all. The man catches up to him at Rogger's Reach because they've run into some more trouble in the Arboretum, and he's hoping that you have a bit of time to swing by and help out. When you get there, Midnight Dew shows up to explain the situation, and she has a very hyperactive, weird-looking seedkin with her. The thing had come hopping out of the Arboretum with way more energy than it should have had, and they think it has something to do with the mud that it's covered in. They figure that if the mud could energize that one seedkin like that, it could work wonders on their new gardens that they planted. They would have gone and got it themselves, but the same mud that made the relatively harmless plant creatures supercharged works the same way on the stuff with teeth, meaning if they would have sent their plant expert in there alone, she would have been used for fertilizer. So the only way for them to actually go in and get what they need is if you're willing to do your whole stabby thing again. The Warrior of Light goes in to handle things and realizes really fast that the mud-coated critters got stronger by a whole 10 levels, which also made them bigger and more creative in their attempts to consume you. One of these mud-coated monsters was clogging up the plumbing, which kept the water from flowing, so once it's dealt with, the water can flow again, which will help with the cleanliness problem in the place. Midnight Dew and the botanist Ishgard had followed your trail, and while you cleared a path, they found the papers explaining that the weird mud was actually a mixture used to rapidly grow the materials the Sharlayans needed to make their formula to turn plants into fertilizer instantly. A side effect was that the mud made actual seedkin aggressive. The good news is all it takes to cure them of that aggression is a little bit of water. In other words, the entire mission could have been handled with a hose pipe and a bucket. But time wasting aside, the Warrior of Light did help them get what they needed to speed up the process of growing their plants, which means good thing for the people of the area, unless of course Square Enix forgets about growing Idleshire and it stays the same way from now until forever. Up in Ishgard, a member of the Ironworks has a message for you from Wedge. The Lalafell wants you to meet him out in Azizla at the Aetherochemical Research Facility to help him out with the top secret project. So of course you fly out there to meet him in what has to be one of my favorite areas in the game. You find Wedge standing around with the Allegan node Gilly that had proved to be useful on one of your earlier trips to the area. Wedge missed the node's company, so he snuck out of the Ironworks headquarters while Sid wasn't paying attention, but when he found the node, it had run out of power. Apparently Allegan batteries only last a few thousand years, which is totally unacceptable when we have cell phones that might last a few hours in our current time. They really need to step up their tech game. Wedge of course feels bad that the node isn't operational, so of course he wants to do something about it, and he volunteers you to help him because why not? He had tried to fix the node himself, but he couldn't, so he's going to do the next best thing. Transfer Gilly into a new body altogether. And there's a place not far away that should have exactly what you need, the Fractal Continuum. It was a warship that the Allegans had turned into a museum for their technology. Wedge sends you there alone because why would he put himself in danger when he can just send you? The place is on lockdown for any visitor without a level 3 clearance, so the moment you pop in, the security systems jump to life and try to murder you. I've been to quite a few museums in my life, and I've never seen anything close to this level of security. At best, our museums may have a few security cameras and an in-shape security guard or two. The Fractal Continuum has a bit more efficient guards, like the Clockwork Soldiers that were made so the citizens would never have to be in danger during war again. Of course, dying in war wasn't the only thing the Allegan people had to worry about, since they had beasts like the Chimera running around who was so dangerous that special machines had to be made to stop them. Having dealt with all these different types of Allegan defenses before, the Warrior of Light doesn't have any problem cutting a path through the robots and beasts to find Gilly a new body. With the new, much more pocket-sized node in tow, you head back to Wedge, and because he's a tech genius, he manages to transfer Gilly's mind into the new body. And everything works fine, so Wedge decides to send her with you so she can see the world while he gets back to the Ironworks before Sid kills him. Honestly, Sid probably didn't even notice that he was gone. The one he should be worried about is Jesse. Either way, that part of your job is over, but there's always more to do when you're the Warrior of Light. Not long after your little trip with Wedge, Philiot, another member of the Ironworks, wants you to head back to the Fractal Continuum with him. The Ironworks detected a strange signal coming from the inside, which, with the luck you have, means some Allegan super weapon woke up after your last trip and is about to start murdering people. But there's no way to know if no one goes to check it out, and they obviously want that someone to be you, so it's back to Oz's Law you go. Unfortunately, the teleporter you used to go into the museum the last time is locked because someone's already triggered the alarm, and the security locks the place down until the threat is gone. That means the only way into the place would be to fly the Enterprise to it directly, something that Philiot, being new and all, isn't all that comfortable doing. He's just a regular guy from the slums of Ishgard, so something this big is beyond him, but he thinks he can handle it with you there. Or he could just use his link pearl and call, all of the other more experienced Ironworks members. Instead, you hop into the ship and head back to the Fractal Continuum. Of course, Philiot decides that it'll be safer if he waits by the ship while you work, since it's clear that whatever triggered the alarm caused a lot of the creatures to break free of their containment units. The security is a lot tougher this time, including an Ultima weapon prototype called the Ultima Warrior that can use the techniques of different icons like the Warring Triad, which makes it extremely dangerous, and it's also the thing that Sid uses to make the G-Warrior later on. But that's a story for another day that I've already covered on this channel. But that's not even the worst thing in this place. The Allegans have a modified behemoth that's a guard dog, which of course you deal with because you're the Warrior of Light. Philiot's surprised you both managed to live, but that's because he doesn't understand how you operate. But at least you learned that the Allegan weapons that were released when the security system kicked on were what the Ironworks sensors had picked up, and the thing that had triggered the alarms was an XIV that had gone into the place. However, when Philiot tried to talk to him, he hadn't been much for conversation. It's strange that the XIV even made it to Oz's Law, because their balloons aren't really equipped to fly that high, which makes him wonder if the rumors are true about an XIV group called the XIV making a special airship. He wants to go talk to them to make sure they don't decide to take their new ship out to Oz's Law again and accidentally wake up some more Allegan tech that destroys the world. The two of you reach the XIV's base in time to see the XIV from Oz's Law getting yelled at for taking the ship out without permission. But he did see something in the Continuum, a chamber where creatures named the XIV were locked away. They were made to serve the Allegans and they looked exactly like the XIV. They were meant to obey without question, which sounds like how the XIV and Kurthus act toward their leaders. Outside of their appearance, the XIV had a lot of genetic problems and they couldn't deal with the elements, which sounds a lot like the current day XIV, which means their homeland that they were looking for might actually be a test tube. But that doesn't deter their leader. If finding their homeland is a bust, they'll look somewhere else for a safe place to settle down, because whether the XIV are the product of Allegan science or not, their personalities and their desires are their own. Regardless of what they do, the fact that their paradise isn't in Oz's Law means you don't have to worry about them messing with the Allegan relics anymore, which means your work is done, at least for now. In Rauger's Reach, the Warrior of Light is stopped by one of the guards named Ortwin because, of course, he needs your help with something. Rauger's Reach was once a stop on the pilgrimage of those who were members of the Fist of Rauger, also known as the monks. The remains of the Temple of the Fist sit at the top of the mountain, and it used to be the very center of their religion. It was the place where monks trained until King Theodoric decided to destroy the whole temple. Recently, a young woman showed up wanting to explore the ruins. He had told her no, since she'd have about 100% chance of dying if she went in there alone, but if she had a strong bodyguard like you, then she should be fine. People just love volunteering you for stuff, don't they? One day the Warrior of Light will learn to say no, but today's not that day, so you head to the temple to meet Marjorie, who is probably still trying to get the guard to let her inside. The woman's overly excited to see that someone else is interested in visiting the temple. She had first learned about the monks when she had gone to one of Professor Eric's lectures, and ever since she's been fascinated by their way of life. So she had decided to visit the most important location of the monk order now that the empire has been pushed out of the area. But of course the guards won't let her through. The monks use the place to train, so the traps and stuff that they have in there would definitely kill the woman, but those traps are the very things that she wants to see. In other words, she's insane. She heard a legend that anyone who could make it to the temple would get to meet a monk from the past, someone who probably has some unique techniques that he can pass on, which does pique the Warrior of Light's interest, especially since you've trained as a monk. And since she asked so nicely, you take Marjorie with you. The moment you start your journey, the animals that have made their home there prove that if Marjorie had tried to get there on her own, she would have been dead the moment she made it past the door. She does have a lot of knowledge about the place, so naturally she gives you information while you fight for your life. One of the monks of the old world used to train by fighting corals, and Ivan Coralfish used weapons shaped like the animals. Apparently the monks really like the things. The closer you get to the closed fist, the more deadly the traps and creatures become. There's even a 4-armed golem called Arbuda that was made to test the speed of the students, and when you fight it, Marjorie takes the opportunity to time you to see how well you match up to the monks of the past. Apparently you fall short even though you do take the thing down. Unfortunately for Marjorie, only warriors are allowed to enter the closed fist, so she waits outside while you go deeper into the temple to see what mysteries it holds. The spirits of long dead monks try to bar your way, but you fight your way past them and come across the spirit of Ivan Coralfist. He's been waiting there for a challenger, and he lets you see the full might of his order. But the dead monk is no match for you. Back outside, when you tell Marjorie about Ivan, she tells you how he had wandered around the mountains fighting the corals until he understood their movements well enough to create a fighting style that matched. And because his spirit's waiting in the temple, Marjorie decides to become a monk so she can meet the legendary warrior herself. But first she'll need to be stronger, and she figures that the best way to get there is to train her mind some more. I'm pretty sure that won't help her fight her way past the creatures, but at least she has a goal, and maybe one day we'll find out how it all turns out. This concludes the story of the Temple of the Fist. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time.